Today we will start with the chapter number 7, that is diversity in the living organisms, and we start with the part number 2. And topics to be covered in this chapter are: first, division Algae, division Bryophyta, division Pteridophyta, division Gymnosperms, and the last is division Angiosperms. And in the part number 1, we are already discussed about the various types of the plant kingdom, that is the 5 types of the classification of kingdoms we have to discuss in very detail. And what do you mean by biodiversity, what is the cause of the biodiversity, taxonomy, what is the purpose of classification. So all these aspects are to be discussed in the part number 1. If you have to face any problem regarding the part number 2, that means you have to go through the part number 1. So let us start with our part number 2, that is the diversity in the living organisms, and we have to discuss the various divisions that are regarding to the diversity in the living organisms. तो सबसे पहले हम शुरुआत करेंगे. क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ किंगडम प्लांटा इज बेस्ड ऑन 3 मेजर फैक्टर्स. जो हमारा किंगडम प्लांटा है दैट इज बेस्ड ऑन द मेजर 3 फैक्टर्स. दैट मींस द डिवीजन ऑफ द किंगडम प्लांटा इज बेस्ड ऑन द मेजर 3 फैक्टर्स. 3 मेजर फैक्टर्स हैं जिसके ऊपर जो किंगडम प्लांटा है उसकी क्लासिफिकेशन जो है वो बेस्ड करती है. फर्स्ट इज द प्लांट बॉडी इज डिफरेंशिएटेड और नॉट. जो प्लांट बॉडी है वो आइदर डिफरेंशिएट करती है या नहीं. प्लांट बॉडी इज आइदर डिफरेंशिएटेड इनटू रूट्स, स्टेम्स, लीव्स, फ्लावर्स, बर्ड्स और नोड्स एंड इंटरनोड्स, एंड आइदर द प्लांट इज डिफरेंशिएटेड और नॉट. क्या प्लांट बॉडी जो है वो इन सब चीजों में जो है वो डिफरेंशिएट करती है या नहीं करती है. दिस इज द फर्स्ट मेजर कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स फॉर classification of the kingdom planta. Next, presence or absence of vascular tissues. Either vascular tissues जो हैं वो present हैं या absent हैं किसमें kingdom planta में. Vascular tissue means that it categorized into xylem and phloem. Xylem means transport of water and minerals. Transport of water and minerals. Whereas in case of phloem, that is transport of food. That means vascular tissue are categorized into 2 categories, that is the xylem and the phloem. In the xylem there is a transport of the water and minerals to the various parts of the plant, whereas in case of the phloem there is a transport of food. That means presence or absence of vascular tissue. क्या जो plant body differentiate होगी kingdom planta में वो either जो है उसमें present है vascular tissue या नहीं है. Third main characteristic जो है classification of kingdom planta का, that is ability to bear seeds and whether these are enclosed within the fruit or not. That means जो हमारा फ्रूट है उसमें सीड्स जो हैं वो अवेलेबल हैं या नहीं है. That means this is the third major characteristics of the classification of the kingdom planta. That means there are 3 major characteristics for the classification of the kingdom planta. That is, first is the plant body is differentiated or not. Second is the presence or absence of the vascular tissues. Third is either the seeds are present within the fruit or not. So on the behalf of these 3 major characters, that means the kingdom planta is divided further into various divisions. So our first main division regarding the kingdom planta is the division Algae. So let us start with the division Algae, and you have to know about the various characteristics of the division Algae. First is the most primitive and simple. जो डिवीजन एल्गा है वो मोस्ट प्रिमिटिव मतलब काफी पुराना डिवीजन है और क्या है काफी सिंपल है. सेकंड इज बॉडी इज नॉट डिफरेंशिएटेड इनटू रूट्स, स्टेम्स और लीव्स एंड अकर्स इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अनडिवाइडेड थैलस, मतलब जो प्लांट बॉडी है देयर इज नो डिफरेंशिएशन बिटवीन द रूट स्टेम्स एंड लीव्स। मैक्सिमम जो प्लांट बॉडी होती है वहां पर डिफरेंशिएशन होती है कि कौन सा पार्ट जो उसका रूट्स है, कौन से स्टेम्स है और कौन से लीव्स हैं। बट इन द डिवीजन एल्गा देयर इज नो डिफरेंशिएशन बिटवीन द रूट स्टेम्स एंड लीव्स एंड अकर इन द फॉर्म ऑफ, किसकी फॉर्म में अकर करेगा, इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अनडिवाइडेड थैलस। दे आर वाटर ग्रोइंग, ये जो प्लांट्स हैं वो कहां पर अकर करते हैं, वाटर ग्रोइंग एरियाज में अकर करते हैं। दे यूजुअली कंटेन ग्रीन फोटोसिंथेटिक पिगमेंट। जो डिवीजन एल्गा है दैट मीन्स ऑलवेज दे कंटेन द ग्रीन कलर्ड पिगमेंट, दैट मीन्स दे कंटेन द chloroplast but sometimes also possesses red, brown and purple pigments. अभी हमने ये कहा कि जो डिवीजन एल्गा है दैट मीन्स ऑलवेज दे कंटेन द फोटोसिंथेटिक पिगमेंट and that are present in the chloroplast, but beside the photosynthetic pigments they also contains the red, brown and purple pigments. So by the green colored pigment, that is the photosynthetic pigments, they can prepare their own food themselves in the presence of sunlight and they utilize the solar energy and they can prepare their own food themselves. That means heterotrophic organisms also depends upon the autotrophic organisms for their mode of nutrition. और photosynthetic pigment के साथ साथ इनमें जो है वो red pigments भी present है, brown भी है और purple भी है। That means they can also possess photosynthetic pigments, they can prepare their own food themselves. Next is the they are autotrophic. वो क्या है, वो autotrophic है। That means they can't depend upon others for their food. They always prepare their own food themselves. But heterotrophic organisms they can depend upon others, depends upon the autotrophic organisms for their food requirements. Next is that they have cell wall made up of cellulose. इनके बाहर जो है, जो एल्गा है इनके बाहर जो है वो एक सेल वॉल होती है जो कि प्रोटेक्ट करती है इनर ऑर्गेनिजम्स को, और वो जो इनकी सेल वॉल है वो किस चीज की मिलकर बनी होती है, सेलुलोज की। नो वेस्कुलर टिश्यूज, इनमें कोई वेस्कुलर टिश्यूज नहीं होते हैं। दैट मीन्स there is no presence of xylem as well as phloem. Xylem means they cannot transport the water and minerals to the various parts of the plants, and in case of the phloem that means they cannot transport the food material to the various parts of the plant. Asexual reproduction by spores, इसमें asexual reproduction जो है, asexual reproduction means that means there is the involvement of only one parent and the offsprings are just like to their parents, and that means the offsprings are the clones of their parents. तो इसमें जो asexual reproduction होती है that is by the formation of spores. किसकी हेल्प से होती है, स्पोर्स की हेल्प से होती है। सेक्स ऑर्गन्स आर सिंपल, इनमें जो सेक्स ऑर्गन्स होते हैं दे आर टोटली सिंपल एंड देयर इज नो एम्ब्रॉय फॉर्मेशन। जब सेक्स ऑर्गन्स जो हैं वो काफी सिंपल है और सिंपल होने की वजह से देयर इज नो फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द एम्ब्रॉय आफ्टर द फर्टिलाइजेशन। दैट मीन्स आफ्टर द कंप्लीशन ऑफ द फर्टिलाइजेशन देयर इज नो एम्ब्रॉय फॉर्मेशन टेक्स प्लेस इन द डिवीजन alga. And the common examples of the division alga, green alga that means Eulothyrex, Spirovera, red alga, Batra, and brown alga that is Laminaria. That means the division alga is categorized into three categories, that is green alga, red alga and the brown alga. In case of the green alga, Eulothyrex and Spirovera are the main common examples of the alga, and red alga that means they contain the Batra, and brown alga they contain the Laminaria. And the common example of the division alga that is the Spirovera. तो Spirovera का जो structure है that is just like this is Spirogyra. So this is all about the division alga. And if you have to face any problem regarding the kingdom planta, that means you have to go through the part number 1, and in part number 1 there is a detailed description regarding the plant kingdom as well as the animal kingdom. And after the completion of the part number 1, that means the students they have to be shifted to the part number 2. Second is the division Bryophyta. First is the division Alga, second is the division Bryophyta. So what are the main characteristics of the division Bryophyta? They are small green multicellular land plants. ये जो है small है, कैसे है, ग्रीन है और मल्टी सेलुलर लैंड प्लांट्स हैं. दैट मीन्स नंबर ऑफ सेल्स को मिलकर जो ये ग्रीन प्लांट्स है वो बने हुए हैं और स्पेशली कहाँ एग्जिस्ट करते हैं, ये लैंड पर एग्जिस्ट करते हैं. दे आर ग्रीन थैलस इन एंड दे आर ऑल्सो कॉल्ड एम्फीबियंस ऑफ द प्लांट किंगडम्स. इनको जो है वो हम एम्फीबियंस ऑफ प्लांट किंगडम भी बोलते हैं. अब क्यों बोलते हैं? बिकॉज दे आर ग्रोइंग ऑन द land and they have multicellular green cells. On the behalf of that reason, they are also called as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. Their plant body is flat. इनकी body जो होती है that is totally flat green thallus. इनकी जो plant body होती है वो कैसी होती है? Flat green thallus like in liverworts. Like कौन सा example है इनमें? Riccia. Common example is the Riccia. एंड लीफी इरेक्ट स्ट्रक्चर्स होते हैं इनके. इनके जो स्ट्रक्चर होता है वो कैसा होता है? लीफी इरेक्ट स्ट्रक्चर होता है. इन मॉसेस लाइक फ्यूनेरिया. नेक्स्ट इज द लिवरवॉर्ट्स में कौन सा है? रिक्शिया. एंड इन द मॉसेस लाइक द फ्यूनेरिया दे लैक रूट स्टेम्स लीव्स एंड फ्लावर्स. जो डिवीजन ब्रायोफाइटा होता है देयर इज नो डिफरेंशिएशन, देयर इज नो they have to be lack the root stems and leaves as well as flowers in the plant. That means division Bryophyta, they have to be totally lack the root stems, leaves and flowers in the plants. No vascular system present. इसमें भी vascular system जो होता है that means there is the absence of the vascular system. That means there is no present of the totally the xylem and the phloems are totally absent in the division Bryophyta. In case of the xylem, there is no transportation of the water and minerals to the various parts of the plants, and in case of the phloem, there is no transportation of the food material to the various parts of the plants. Sex organs are multicellular. Division Bryophyta के जो sex organs होंगे they are totally multicellular. Rhizoids are present. इसमें जो rhizoids होंगे plants में वो present होते हैं और वो rhizoids क्या करते हैं? To absorb the water and nutrients from the soil, and after the absorption of the minerals and nutrients from the soil, after that they have to be circulate to the various parts of the plant. And there is the formation of embryo. Embryo is formed after the process of the fertilization. So all these are the characteristics of the division Bryophyta. And the common example in case of the mosses, that is the funaria, and the diagrammatically representation of the funaria is just like this. This is the funaria. And Markensia is also an example of the division Bryophyta. That is Markensia. It is also a common example of the division Bryophyta. Markensia is also a green colored plant. They have to be flat structure and green. They have also possess the chloroplast. That means they possesses the photosynthetic pigment, and they have to prepare their own food themselves. And these are the examples of the division Bryophyta. After the division of Bryophyta, the next third division regarding the kingdom planta is the division Pteridophyta, and this division Pteridophyta is more advanced as compared to the division Algae as well as division Bryophyta. So let us start with the division Pteridophyta. तो सबसे पहले हम ये देखेंगे कि Pteridophyta जो शब्द है वो कहाँ से है. Pteridophyta means terrace. Terrace शब्द से जो है evolve हुआ Pteridophyta, and terrace means ferns. The meaning of the terrace is ferns. So what are the characteristics of the division Pteridophyta? First is they are found in the damp shady places. ये कहाँ पर पाए जाते हैं? Pteridophyta जो है they are found in the damp shady places. That means they are found in the dark places where there is no involvement of the light. That means they are totally found in the dark places, damp shady places. Their body is made up of root stems and leaves. तो इनकी जो बॉडी है, अभी हमने एल्गा या ब्रायोफाइटा में जो पढ़ा, दैट मीन्स देयर बॉडी इज नॉट डिफरेंशिएटेड इनटू रूट्स, स्टेम्स एंड लीव्स, but in case of the Pteridophyta, their body is differentiated into roots, stems and leaves. They have well-developed vascular system. Alga and Bryophyta में जो थे वो vascular systems present नहीं थे. That means there is lack of the xylem and the fluid. That means there is no proper involvement of the transport of the water and minerals to the plants in case of the xylem, and in case of the phloem there is no transportation of food. But in case of the Pteridophyta, there is the well-developed vascular systems are present in case of the Pteridophyta. They don't have flowers and fruits. इनमें जो है वो फ्लावर्स एंड फ्रूट्स नहीं होते हैं. दे आर ऑलवेज ग्रीन. ये हमेशा ग्रीन रहते हैं, हरे रहते हैं, बट दे हैव नो फ्रूट्स एंड फ्लावर्स. सेक्स ऑर्गन्स आर मल्टीसेलुलर. इनमें जो सेक्स ऑर्गन्स होते हैं दैट मीन्स दे आर मल्टीसेलुलर. फर्टिलाइज्ड एग्स आर डेवलप्ड इनटू एम्ब्रॉय. इसमें जो फर्टिलाइज्ड एग्स होते हैं दे हैव टू बी डेवलप्ड इनटू एम्ब्रॉय आफ्टर द प्रोसेस ऑफ द फर्टिलाइजेशन. And the common examples of the division Pteridophyta are club mosses, that is Lycopodium and horsetails, and Equistum and ferns, that is Azolla, etc. अगर हम ferns का जो representation देखते हैं diagrammatically, तो that is just like this. These are the ferns. And in Equistum, this is the Equistum. So these are the examples of the division Pteridophyta, that is club mosses, Lycopodium and the horsetails, and Equistum and ferns in case of the Azolla. After that, our next important division is the Gymnosperm, and this divisions, Gymnosperm division as well as division Angiosperms, are most advanced as compared to the division Pteridophyta as well as division Bryophyta and the division Algae. These are most advanced divisions as compared to rest of the divisions. Division Gymnosperms, they are primitive and simple seed plants. ये भी primitive हैं. These are also primitive, पर उतने primitive नहीं है जितने कि division Alga है. As compared to division Alga, these are also primitive, but they have simple seed plants. इसमें जो है वो simple seed plants होते हैं. The seeds produced by them are neat. इसमें जो seeds produced होते हैं division Gymnosperms में, वो seeds कैसे होते हैं? The seeds are neat and are not enclosed in the fruits. इनके जो seeds होते हैं डिवीजन जिम्नोस्पर्म्स के जो सीड्स हैं वो नेक्ड होते हैं एंड दे आर नॉट एनक्लोज्ड इन एनी टाइप ऑफ द फ्रूट्स. दे आर प्रिमिटिव एंड सिंपल सीड प्लांट्स. ये क्या है? प्रिमिटिव है और सिंपल सीड प्लांट्स हैं. दे आर पेरिनियल, एवरग्रीन एंड वुडी प्लांट्स. जो मेन इंपॉर्टेंट कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स है जिम्नोस्पर्म्स का, दैट मीन्स दे आर पेरिनियल, always green and they are woody plants. सबसे important characteristics जो है इनका, that is perennial. Perennial means they are last for several years. ये काफी लंबे समय तक रहते हैं. That means they are several for last years. और दूसरा ये है कि they are always green. ये हमेशा green रहते हैं. That means they do not turn into different types of the plant. That means they are always in the green form. वो हमेशा हरे रहते हैं. And they are always woody plants. और ये कैसे plants होते हैं? Woody plants होते हैं. The sporophylls are aggregated to form cones. इसमें जो sporophylls होते हैं, sporophylls means leaves bearing sporangia. Leaves bearing sporangia. Sporophylls means leaf bearing sporangia. तो ये जो स्पोरोफिल्स होते हैं इसमें जो लीव्स होते हैं वो वियर करते हैं स्पोरेंजिया को, एंड दे आर एग्रीगेटेड. और ये जो स्पोरोफिल्स होते हैं, ये स्पोरेंजिया, लीफ बियरिंग जो स्पोरेंजिया होते हैं, ये हमेशा क्या करते हैं? प्रोटेक्ट करते हैं सेक्स सेल्स को. तो दे लीफ बियरिंग स्पोरेंजिया ये क्या करते हैं? एग्रीगेटेड टू फॉर्म कोन्स. यही जो स्पोरोफिल्स होते हैं वो आपस में मिलकर एग्रीगेट होकर क्या बनाते हैं, कोन्स को बनाते हैं। दैट मीन्स दे फॉर्म द कोन्स। कोन्स को बनाएंगे, दैट इज मेल एंड फीमेल कोन। दो तरह के कोन्स की डेवलपमेंट होगी। स्पोरोफिल्स जब आपस में इकट्ठे एग्रीगेट हो जाएंगे, एग्रीगेट होने के बाद वहां पर जो फॉर्मेशन होगी that is the formation of cones, and there are different types of the cones are formed on the plant, that is the male cone and the female cone. In the xylem lag vessels, इसमें जो vascular tissues तो present है, पर उसमें जो xylem है वो क्या लैग करता है, vessels को लैग करता है। xylem lags vessels and the phloem lags the companion cells. That means xylem जो है वो किस चीज को लैग करेगा, xylem always lag the vessels and phloem always lags the companion cells. For example, the common examples of the division Gymnosperms are the Cycas and the Pinus. They are always green plants and they are woody plants, and their seeds are always naked. They are not enclosed in the fruits, and they have to be arranged, the sporophylls and sporophylls aggregated to form the cones such as male and female cones, and there is the more primitive and simple seed plants. And the common examples of the division Gymnosperms are Cycas and the Pinus. After the division Gymnosperm, the last division of this kingdom planta is the division Angiosperm, and this is most advanced technique as compared to rest of the divisions. Angiosperms, they are highly evolved. सबसे ज्यादा जो highly evolved division है rest of the division से, वो कौन सा division है, that is the division Angiosperms. और that this division always produces the seeds. ये हमेशा क्या produce करेंगे, seeds को produce करेंगे that are enclosed within the fruits. They are always produce the seeds, and their seeds are always enclosed within the fruits. They produce the reproductive organs are present in the flowers. इनमें जो अभी हमने इसमें देखा कि जो angiosperms हैं, they always bear the reproductive flowers, and their flowers are always in the multicolors. Whereas in case of the gymnosperms, there is no presentation of the flowers, but their plants are always green. They produce the male and the female cones, and the plants are woody. But in angiosperms, their reproductive organs are present in the flowers. इनमें जो reproductive organs होंगे, they are always present on the flowers. The next important characteristics of the division angiosperm, that is embryo of these have cotyledons. इनके जो embryo होते हैं, that is formed after the fertilizations. They have the cotyledons, and that is seed leaves. Next is angiosperm has triploid cell. जो इसमें triploid cells होते हैं, they have to provide the nutrients to the embryo, and that embryo is formed after the fertilization. तो ये जो triploid cells होते हैं, that is formed in the endosperm, and they have to supply the proper amount of nutrients to the embryo that is formed after the fertilization. Depending upon the number of cotyledons, that means the angiosperms are divided into two types. Depending upon the number of cotyledons, the angiosperms, they have to be divided into two groups. दो groups हैं हमारे, कौन-कौन से, monocots and dicots. Let us discuss in detail about the monocots and the dicots. Monocots जो है, the name ही understood करवा रहा है. That means they have only one single cotyledon. Monocots में जो होगा वो single cotyledon होगा. The seeds with one cotyledon, they categorize into the category of monocots. Their leaves have parallel venation. इनके जो leaves होते हैं, that means the leaves they have the parallel venation. इनके जो leaves होते हैं उनमें कौन से venation होते हैं, that is parallel venation. They have fibrous roots. इनके जो roots होते हैं वो कैसे होते हैं, fibrous. They have fibrous roots. They have fibrous roots. That means monocots, they have parallel venation and they have the fibrous roots. Flowers are trimerous. इनके जो flowers होते हैं, that means they are trimerous. That means they bear the number of petals, that is 3. That is trimerous. the number of petals in the flowers of the monocots are 3. Vascular bundles are scattered. इनमें जो vascular bundles होते हैं monocots में, they are always scattered and closed. And the common examples of the monocots are maize and rice. Next is the dicots, and the name dicot understood that they have 2 cotyledons. The seeds, they have the 2 cotyledons. इनमें जो dicots हैं, they have to contain the 2 cotyledons and they have reticulate venations. इनमें जो venation होती है वो कैसी होती है? Reticulate होती है. They have tap root system. इसमें एक ही root से जो होते हैं वो various roots निकलते हैं. That is the tap root system. That means dicots, they always wear the tap root system. Next is the flowers are pentamerous, whereas in case of the dicots, their flowers are always trimerous, but in case of dicots, their flowers are always pentamerous. That means the number of petals in the dicots are always 5 in number. Vascular bundles are arranged in a ring. इनके जो vascular bundles होते हैं, they are always arranged in the ring. They are always arranged in the ring. Whereas in monocots, their vascular bundles are scattered. वो कैसे होते हैं? वो scattered होते हैं and are closed. Scattered and closed. These are vascular bundles are arranged in ring, and in case of monocots, the vascular bundles are always scattered. And the common examples of the dicots are pea and sunflower. And there is one important question from the examination of point of view, that what is the difference between the monocots and the dicots. And monocots, that means they have single cotyledon, 1 cotyledon, whereas in dicots they are 2 cotyledons. दूसरा ये बताया था कि the flowers are always trimerous in case of monocots, whereas in case of dicots the flowers are always pentamerous. The vascular bundles are scattered and closed in case of the monocots, whereas in case of the dicots the vascular bundles are arranged in the ring. So there is parallel venation in case of the monocots, whereas in case of the dicots the venation is always reticulate. उसमें जो venation होगी that is reticulate. So this is all about the plant kingdom, and I think you got it. And the next lecture, that is the part number 3 of diversity in living organism, that is to be continued in our part number 3, that is lecture number 3.